and just do a little intro and then pass it over to you. So I'm thrilled to see all of you guys here. We have a number of people who are going to be watching asynchronously from around the world, all eager to find out what is happening in the world of Serj Hunt and City as a School. I want to welcome whoever's watching and you today to Hope Braintrust. It's a collaborative space online and in person. Yes, sometimes we do in-person events designed for and by this growing community of educators, innovators, and entrepreneurs. My mission is to mobilize authentic connections between all stakeholders in education: students, teachers, parents, the builders, the academics, and everyone in between. This is a space where you will meet courageous and willing people you'll never otherwise have met. So I'm going to skip right to our special guest, Serj Hunt from City as a School. I've had the pleasure of watching Serj develop and launch remarkable initiatives, one of which he'll be sharing with you today, which I believe lies in the intersection of the future of entrepreneurship and education. The Hope Braintrust is getting an insider peek of the development of ARK, an AI learning co-pilot built by City as a School. And we were lucky to have an exploration of ARK earlier this summer, as Serj shared how we're becoming centaurs. How are we becoming centaurs, Serj? I love that description this summer, and I wonder if you could just share with this crew today and whoever's listening, how are we becoming centaurs, and what has the response been from people around the world about that concept?
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, pleasure to be with you all and see new faces, old faces. I'm going to actually pull up some older slides and kind of touch on that centaur piece because I think it frames up what's happening in education with AI. And then I'll get into the slides that I prepared for today and demo some of the new features and some of the progress we're making on ARK, and then lead into some time for us to play and use some of these new features, and then come back and sort of discuss like how this could be used in your context, where this might need improvement, maybe even other things you'd like to see in AI tools like it. So pulling back to where we, to a previous time that Hope and I were jamming. Let's pull this slide up here. So in a previous talk, I was talking about this idea of becoming centaurs. Centaurs, this term comes from when we see humans and computers augmenting each other. In chess, centaur teams refer to teams of humans and computer players that often outperform solely human players and solely computer algorithms. So something very interesting that happens when you combine these two, the intuitions of humans and the compute speeds and memory of machines. So this term centaur is often used in chess, and these augmented teams of humans using machines. And it's also having a profound effect on education. That profound effect is basically that the traditional bottleneck of human to human knowledge transmission is shifting from one human's mind being the bottleneck and then passing some information to a book or another human. Books opened up this transmission, and now AI is doing this at an even greater scale. So this is having a huge impact on the way that a young mind can find wonder and say, oh, what is this bug? And then suddenly get access to all of super history, this idea that there is so much knowledge, so much information that they can interact with now, which leads to this fun sentence that I like to use, that the distinction between merely existing and profoundly learning is narrowing, especially in the age of AI. And so at City as a School, we've been leaning into this a bit and trying to create tools that support this natural process of learning and lean into the fact that that bottleneck is being removed, the human-to-human bottleneck and the human-to-human biases. Obviously, AI comes with its own biases, but now we have this great opportunity of humans interacting with a vastly different type of teacher. And so this talk is all about ARK and our Copilot that we made, which is an AI Copilot for self-directed and project-based learning. A little bit about me before we get into things. I am currently founder of City as a School. We've built a tech platform for enabling learning ecosystems at the city level, which is a nerdy way of saying we turn cities into marketplaces of classes, in person and online, allow young people to book those classes, and then build a portfolio at the end of that that gives them job opportunities. I've also been an associate at Wild Learning Sciences, where we studied agency and this idea of learning power. So how do you support agency in education? And also been a design philosopher and trainer at School of Social Design, working with teams at Google Maps, Facebook, etc. And also a product manager at Galileo, which was another edtech platform that you might remember in the space. So a little bit about ARK. ARK's your AI Copilot for career success. Some of you played with it, some of you haven't. Just to recapture what it is, it creates customized learning pathways based on individuals' interests. This is so it can prepare people for the evolving job market. And it's also designed to evolve with the job market. So we haven't designed much static content. Actually, it's all generated quite dynamically. And now the new features that we've been working on also allow it to produce scaffolded project-based learning projects to help speed up the time it takes to create a portfolio. And so the way we like to frame the problem of learning is that learning is mostly an explore and an exploit problem. There's an exploring side to learning, which is discovering new concepts, learning about new things, finding new information, but you don't want to over-explore. You actually need to, if you can get lost in endless curiosity, but you don't build anything, then we're not exploiting the information that we've learned. And so you also need support on how to exploit the information and not just be a consumer of information, but like a wielder and a builder with that information. So that's the kind of way we frame learning, and ARK can support both sides of that. I'll get into that. Some stats on how we've been doing. We now have 310 learners using ARK. We have 900 pathways that have been generated, which has been really fun. And here's just like a sample of a query that I ran to look at like what people are learning. There's some really crazy stuff on here.
This is so cool. I
yeah,
love
right?
it. Yes, since we last chatted, there's all of this amazing actual interaction from young people.
Yeah, like 2 people want to be city planners. We've had electrical engineering, edtech product managers come up 5 times. Car mechanic, quantum entanglement, JavaScript, astronomy and exoplanets. Software development's pretty consistent. Art is just high up there. I think the craziest one that I've noticed, where is it?
Isotopes of boron.
Yeah, I think, oh, there it is. Yeah. It's just like, you can really put anything into here, and then you'll generate a pathway for learning the core concepts and skills related to this thing. So here's just like a random, someone's been putting Arabic in. We've even seen Japanese put in there. And then because it's an LLM, it will output Japanese right back. So we haven't been intentionally localizing content, but it is now becoming a global thing that you can use. And we're seeing different languages being put in. And a lot of the progress of ARK has really come from our pilot with Brave Generation Academy. And also thank you to Hope for weaving that connection. She saw the synergy, and there clearly was. Brave Generation Academy have a network of sort of learning centers around the world. These are sort of like groups of 6 to even 100 learners in different locations around the world. And we've been piloting with them, and they have this idea of a learning coach as a different role to a teacher. And their learning coaches are perfect because they're experimenting with pedagogy. They use tools already. They're not sort of just bound by the standard curriculum. Actually, they spend a lot of time in the day, not just working on the standardized curriculums, but also on project-based learning and building portfolios. So it was a perfect synergy for us to explore. Some big takeaways there was that we changed our concept simplifier, if you remember what this was in our last demo, to a new prompt underneath, which is, I don't understand. We just found that this was really common for young people to be like, I don't understand this. And I'll show you what that does actually later. We then implemented the project scoper, which you'll see later today. which takes a project idea and outputs a scaffold of a project. We also then just saw that we needed to create shareable to-dos. So once you have a project, your coaches need to see the to-dos that you're working on. So we're creating new coach dashboards. And we also started looking at designing streaks and gamification, which you can see in the top of these new designs, which is, building in that sort of habit of, checking off to-dos, like researching something, finding the best resource for something. These are all common things that the coaches set for their learners. And now they kind of have streaks that are helping to gamify that
right?
experience.
Snapchat. Did you pull that from Snapchat?
Oh, streaks. No, I haven't. I need to check this out on Snapchat. I haven't used Snapchat for a long time. Yeah. And then also for some of our older students who are at university, they just want to put in PDFs and then riff with ARK on like, build me a learning pathway for all of the concepts for my university course. Generate some content for me, find me the best resources, find me people that I should be speaking to about these concepts. So that's a new feature that we've been looking at. And in general, there's always this problem of EdTech of like, how do you get into the schools? And because we're a freemium tool, it's very easy for us to, once we can demonstrate that like actually using this tool saves you time, energy, and stress, it's not like adding a whole new LMS, or it's not like adding a whole new set of content. It's actually just a tool for making all the normal processes that happen just happen more effectively and faster. So that's kind of how we're nicely sliding into these things. Awesome. So I'm going to demo sort of 3 new features or 3 use cases of ARK, and then we'll get into some time that we can play, feedback, and just talk about the implications of AI in education. So you've all seen, hopefully, if you haven't seen, you can check it out, a video of our normal flow in ARK, which is to say, I want to become an X, some kind of career. You can also copy and paste the whole job description to ARK, and I've showed that before. This talk, I'd actually like to share the use of ARK for trying to get someone to the frontier of knowledge very quickly. So there are 2 ways that I'm going to demo this to you. If you'd like, you can scan this QR code here and open up what I'm about to open up. This is called the Tech Detector, which is a piece of software that was built. You can also visit it at techdetector.de. For governments and large companies to see at what stage of development is a new technology and when is it coming to production in the real world. So there's this idea of readiness levels. So there's research on the outside ring, and these are newly researched things. And then on the inside ring, there are technologies which are already in the market, like 3D slicer software, for example. So job descriptions are cool. You can put them into ARK, but I just want to demo this use case of like taking something that's very frontier. Like, let's look at a graphene cytobot. What is that? Nanoscale microbot made from dormant bacteria spores. That looks fun. CO2 absorbing streetlights. What do we want? Let's look at nuclear fusion reactors. Go on. So let's take the more abstract one. Let's see how that performs. The graphene cytobot is a pretty crazy piece of technology. And I'm going to grab the description and the title and just bring it over to ARK. And now ARK's built around this idea of commands. There are many commands, job descriptions, the pathways, finding job opportunities, AI tutors for any subject, helping you understand concepts, finding mentors. But the core one that gets used is this pathway generator. So let's just put that in there. And let's see, can we build a pathway to the frontier of knowledge? There's also other places that I like to look for really fringe new technologies. One of those is tech trees by Foresight Institute. If you go to the Foresight Institute, you can find these tech trees, which are actually maintained by scientists and their labs. So here's a tech tree for space technology. It serves the same function, right? Where you can see, what is the leading stuff that we haven't solved yet for space robotics, flexible resonant modes, time-delayed human robotic interactions, whatever these are, you can copy and paste these into ARK. And so we've generated a pathway. What does that actually mean? So a pathway is curating classes. These are classes on the City as a School network, which might relate to this path of knowledge. ARK is also going out and getting free resources from the web. So this is looking at Cytobots, YouTube content. It will also go out to Udemy, Coursera, and all the other big course platforms and find you content about probably robotics and nanoscale robots. And then it's breaking down all the concepts you need into basically 5 core modules, starting from first principles. So here we can see it's talking about nanoscale, biomicrobots, bacteria spores, graphene quantum dots. These are all concepts that you'll need to know to really understand like what these are basically. And if you don't understand them, you can spin up an AI tutor or a concept simplifier, and this will open up a common sort of chat dialogue that you see with AI tutors to learn about these concepts. I won't demo that here because many people have already seen the AI tutors work. So that is passing those concepts into this chat conversation and allowing the learner to learn through dialogue. So yeah, that's the first sort of use case that many people don't think to use the pathway generator for, but is entirely feasible. Cool. Second use case, which we've been working on from insights from Brave Generation Academy, is I don't understand. This is like a common thing that you know, learners are going to run up to you and say. But often when people, what we found is we don't want to give them the answer straight away. We actually want to help them understand specifically what it is that they don't understand. So it's not that they don't understand something like triangles. Hey, you know, Mr. I don't understand triangles. There's something very specific about triangles that they don't understand, and we need to get to what that is. And so we've been demoing. Here we go. Run it again. No, please work. And so this prompt that's underlying this this test interface, this is not in ARK yet, but you can imagine something similar being in ARK. This is basically taking the idea of triangles and restating it back to you, just so you know that this is, you know, the concept that we're actually talking about. And then it'll break it down into a couple different things and say, which of these things don't you understand about triangles? And so we found this is like a really helpful aid for teachers as well as for the learners themselves, as they can get clear on like, oh, I actually mean this thing. Like, I don't know the different types of triangles, or I don't know how to calculate the area of triangles. And so this has been really helpful. And even outside of ARK, we haven't even brought it into ARK yet, just in this test environment, this is actually rapidly becoming one of the quickest, most used features, like as much as the pathways, just because the frequency is so high. You know, so many young people are just like, you know, you've just given me a textbook, and that's just confusing. So let's talk it out. And I can follow up and say like, oh, like, I don't know how to calculate the area of a triangle, and get more follow-up responses there on like how best to do that. So that's coming into ARK very soon. Very like, it makes sense. It was one of those insights where you're like, oh yeah, this is a thing that obviously everyone's going to run into, but we hadn't quite thought of it, and appreciative to Brave Generation Academy for piloting with us to do that. And then the other big one was project scoping. So project-based learning costs a lot of money. You know, you have to train teachers to do it, and they often aren't good task managers. And often, you know, there's many new things to wrap your head around, as well as like pedagogical consistency and like grading project-based learning. It's just so much going on, right? So it only costs a lot to implement project-based learning, but I just want to share this this demo here, and I'll run it in a second as well with a new use case. But essentially, you go to the learner's profile, you input the project idea that you have. Let's say this is a platform game for a Super Mario's type video game. You're going to input the type of video game that it is, type of project that it is. So this is a games development. And then you're also going to include some sort of constraints on the project, or like required things. And for example, here it is. It says the artwork should be produced in Photoshop, and the game itself should be using the Unity game engine. So you give it some very specific details about the project. set the end date and start date, hit generate, and then voila, you get your to-dos scaffolding the project. So this basically helps the learner and the teacher say, oh, great, like this is the overall arc of this project and how you would complete it. As you can see here, it says, integrate power-ups and collectibles, implement a scoring system, add audio and visual effects, polish things, and then figure out how to publish and market the game. All the way from the start, where it was saying like create the game concepts and designs, develop the character and controls. So it's giving this kind of scaffold for the project. And then this just becomes, as you can see in the middle tab, tasks for a learner to go and complete. And you can monitor task completion with your coach. And in the future, we'll be adding AI agents to each to-do. So if it's a to-do that doesn't need to be done by a human, like write the website copy or like the first draft of my website copy, it can go and complete the to-do by itself. So that's the to-do list that does itself as well. So that's how we speed up the exploit part of the exploit problem. So building projects shouldn't be a problem. It should be about like communicating how you did it, what tools you were using, and then showing this off to employers or like future collaborators. So the to-do list that does itself, I don't understand things, and building pathways to frontier knowledge. Those have been what I've shown. And yeah, I'm just going to hand it over to you guys for the last sort of 30 minutes to play with this, because something we noticed was like, I'm probably the wrong person to ask like how aligned we should be with grades and standardized testing, but it's something that comes up a lot. And so I came up with these, this sort of template of like a project, and I want to, so you guys can think through like, what would it look like to do a project that was aligned with a specific grading criteria or a specific curriculum. And I went ahead and made this one, which is a jewelry box for my IGCSE design technology project. I'm going to put this into my portfolio. So this is, again, for like IGCSE design and technology. I'm going to make the jewelry box and also create a research document, which explains how I built the jewelry box. What else do I want in there? I want that it's a hardware project and a jewelry box. And then I need to set some constraints to this project. So I'm going to say that it, must include deliverables from the IGCSE design technology grading criteria, and that the jewelry box should be, no bigger than 15 by 15 centimeters. Set some start dates, set some end dates, and hit generate. Then this will scaffold my project, and hopefully be consistent with the criteria. And if it's not consistent, we'll be working on consistency. There might be a drop down here in the future which says which curriculum or system do you want to be consistent with, and we've pre-trained or like fine-tuned our models to look at those different criteria. So here you can see my jewelry box project. This is just a note, by the way. So this is like where I can put my text and my images of my project. But on the top of the note are my to-dos. I can change, obviously, the status of them, change the priority of them. But here you can see at a high level, learner and teacher can say, cool, like we're going to research different jewelry box designs. Okay, next, like we might need to sketch the jewelry box designs. And then later we're going to actually like document all your research. We're going to test the functionality of the box. Like, does it open and close well? You're actually going to sand and finish the jewelry. So it's producing this like high level scaffold. If I don't like any of this, I can just add new to-dos. I can also just change the text in the to-dos. You get the picture. So this is how we're sort of solving or supporting or scaffolding the explore-exploit problem of learning with ARK. Cool. I'm going to pause the screen share there before we get into demo stuff. Hope, was there anything that you want to weave in before we go into, I set the stage for playing?
Thank you, first of all. It's always amazing to witness somebody walk through a project that is evolving literally before your eyes. and you're developing it, and your brain is really immersed in it. You're very close to it. So with that being said, I'm curious to hear from educators and learners in our little group, and we've got a few people off camera. What comes up for you when you see Serj drive through this portal of learning? What are the first things that come up for you? Just first reactions before we dive in and play with it together. Feel free to just popcorn, unmute.
I'm really blown away. I mean, I'm taking it all in. So I don't have exactly the words. I need to sit on it, but I feel like there's so many applications. I mean, it's so simplified right now, so forgive me, but yeah, I'm really astounded, and I'm curious to learn more. I might have a little bit more defined questions for you as we see the demo, but it's really impressive.
Thanks, Lisa.
Go on, I'm curious. Oh, Vanita, go ahead.
Hi there. Yeah, I've been listening and I'm so super curious. I have to say, the whole idea of having a project mapped out and the language that you used about maybe teachers not having the better skill set around navigating, overseeing that project thing really resonates with me. I feel like as the kids get into the older grades, middle school and high school, the concept of an independent study unit and the concept of, taking an idea or a project and running with it, where it's like maybe Genius Hour was some of the bigger beginnings of like taking an idea that a kid was interested in and wanting to, oh, for once we get to let the kids decide what they want to learn and go with it. But you nailed it when you said that the scaffolding and the overall kind of getting from A to Z is missing a lot of parts there. And so I do think that while there's a lot of fear around AI in education, just through lack of understanding and awareness, that tool in and of itself will be a game changer.
Thank you. That's it means a lot to hear, Vanita, and especially coming from you and your work. I remember when we did the first session together and we looked at this in ChatGPT, and hopefully you could see the evolution of that, where that's come to this. So yeah, thank you.
It's almost like the Khan Academy of a project for kids, and like it shouldn't default on the parents to scaffold for the kids, because then you're not actually building the skill set of scaffolding the project, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious, Claire, Ton, you are teaching or supporting learners how to learn. I'm wondering, maybe none of this is that surprising, or is it? Is watching the evolution of ARK as a learner, diving into teaching yourself how to learn and others how to learn, what's coming up for you when you see Serj in his demo?
Yeah, I think that it's a great product. And like I really like the idea of how we're integrating the AI part as a tool to help the students and the teacher to like focus on the meaningful work, which for the students is the studying, and for the teacher is like delivering the content or like supporting the students. And I just like have a few questions because like I also like kind of curious about this topic as well. It's like I remember like you have a part talking about the AI creating the learning pathway. Um, can you like brief just walk me through like how the path was created, and like how does it relate to like the students' prior knowledge? Because I feel like right now it's like one general path for all the students,
Right.
but do you guys work on something that can personalize it and like maybe identify the weak point, strength point, so that we can even make it even better for the learners. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the first question, I guess.
Yeah. That's an awesome question. I mean, it's absolutely the one to be asking, and this is the joy of AI, right? Like can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
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 So underlying all of this, we are building a knowledge graph underneath each learner. And that's basically to say, if anyone's seen like a systems map or even a mind map, right? There's bubbles and there's lines that connect the bubbles. We're building this for each learner. As they use the tool over time, there is a deeper and deeper sense of the concepts which have already been shown to them, and also the terms that they're using in their projects, the to-dos that they have completed and the to-dos that they haven't completed, haven't completed. So getting a very granular sense of, of where their sort of knowledge, the edge of their knowledge is. And it just improves over time because the knowledge graph gets bigger and denser. From the onset, we already have the learning goal, which is basically their bio. So they can say, hey, I want to get into Stanford or something. Like my goal is to get hired in the next 6 months. And this will actually change the way that ARK works in various commands. It'll also make sure that the project deadlines are like, you saw the project deadlines in there, that they're kind of consistent with these kinds of goals. So there's deep personalization that we can do. All we have right now is actually just the underlying structure of the knowledge graph, but we've yet to really unleash it into like what you can do with the knowledge graph. Like actually visualizing the knowledge graph is another fun thing to say like, hey, you've explored like a bunch of concepts in this area of maths, but like here's some other concepts which are not as filled in, or they're like grayed out and you haven't clicked into them before. Do you want to go there? And so we can use that as like the deep personalization over time.
Yeah. Awesome. I have a follow-up question. Well, Hope, would you mind? Would you mind if I ask the question?
I love it.
Sure.
Yeah. So I feel like the constraint right now is like the students and their ability to ask the questions, and also like having that intrinsic curiosity to like, just like really explore the topic. Because like I feel like with tool like this and other tool out there, the ability to find information is has rapidly like decreased. Like we can literally find anything in seconds now. But like the curiosity is something that I'm really interested in. Like, do you implement any protocols or any ideas to like encourage the students to ask more questions and become more curious? Because I feel like once we can reignite that curiosity, like a lot of the learning can be self-directed from there.
Yeah, totally. Um, I I think something that's been very surprising to me, well, not very surprising, probably makes sense, is I think you're super right. Tools like this only really help those who can start to engage that deep curiosity. And that's something which many people just haven't learned to access yet, especially if they've been in normal schools. I think, there's a couple strategies which we've been looking at to improve that. One is actually we're trying to build a 30-day like high activation async or synchronous course that teachers could run. We've been working with a partner in the US who do talent pipelines for like Apple and Cisco and these very large companies. And their big insight was basically you can't engage the minds if you don't engage the hearts of a learner. And they'd work with these groups who don't have their curiosity engaged or any idea of like their learning styles or their interests, and then they'd run them through this like 30-day program. At the end of it, they're going like, I just want to discover all these things, I want to like find out about this, I'm going that direction, I know what I'm good at. So that's one strategy, is like I want to bring more of that into like an offering that we can do, but that's outside of the technology mainly. But when you actually get into the technology, I think there's maybe two strategies at least that we're thinking about, which is one is using like visualizing the knowledge graph and kind of making it a fun, interactive, gamified thing to look at. Like where does that bubble go? Where is this going? What happens if I click that? Like playing with explore and game mechanics. that's coming later down the line. But at least in the early onset, I've just spun up an AI tutor with the pre-prompt of software engineer, and then we're generating sort of suggested questions. And so part of being curious is also learning how to ask good questions. And so seeing good questions can help to model more deeper ways of like diving into a topic. And obviously this is going to ask me like what level I am, high school student, college student, or professional, but we're trying to leave little snippets of good questions and like trailheads in the interface. So it just feels like an endless breadcrumb of discovery. But you're right, I think there's two parts to that, right? Like it's how do you engage the curiosity, get it there in the first place? And then you're right, with like all these tools, they already support the curious.
Can I follow on to that?
Yeah.
The curiosity and getting into the hearts of learners is definitely on my mind these days, being a parent and also working with people of all ages in education. I just shared on my newsletter a little spotlight on Austin Scholar. If anyone's not following, Toan shared her work with me. And she did a whole piece on asking good questions. She even works at a self-directed school or learning space, and they're having trouble sometimes learning how to ask the right questions. So my actually question to you, Toan, in asking that brilliant question, hitting the nail on the head, is you're a young person. How do you suggest, Serj, and whoever's on the call or listening in, how do you suggest we instigate, we support, we inspire curiosity in young people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really comes down to one word, which is relevance. Like if something is not relevant for the learner, they won't be curious about it. And also the subject should have like a level of prior knowledge. And like because like if a student's walking to a brand new topic and they have nothing to grasp upon, then they won't be curious. Because they won't have like the points to connect with each other. Because like I feel like curiosity, the point with curiosity is like there's like a lot of dots in your head, then they're floating around. And curiosity is when your brain tries to link those dots together, and that process of linking and then finding the answer and seeing if that's true or not. I feel like that is when the curiosity is happening. And if we use that analogy in the first place, then we can't really be curious if we don't have those dots. So I think for the learners, maybe who are learning a new subject, or maybe even a subject they're learning in school right now, I think the good place to start right now is like just on a piece of paper, just list out all the questions that you have, like anything that you have related to the topic that you're learning about. And then from there, after you learn something, like you can literally ask a question, go on to an AI, like what Search so, and then answer that question and think about it. Think about how it relates to other points or like other keywords. And from there, like by thinking about the relationship, like you see how everything is connected in like the bigger picture. And once you have a bigger picture, you will really see like the relevancy of it, and then like you will understand that it's important for you, and then you will become even more curious about it. Yeah, so I think that's my answer for it. I am still on this journey of exploring how curiosity and all this thing work. So yeah, take what I say with a grain of salt.
Thanks, Toan. Relevant is the key word. And I think finding young people like you, Austin Scholar, other young people, maybe you're exploring that, Serj, with plucking out ambassadors or champions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, I think to riff on that final point is often the tools we've built really work for someone who's found that curiosity. And I think this is just kind of ongoing question of like, how do you bridge that gap? And I think it's mainly cultural. So yeah, relevancy is possible when culture supports relevancy. It's not really a technological barrier now. Yeah, it's like, do people around you support you to find relevant things and these kind of things? So spot on, Tone. Yeah, I really agree. Cool, guys. I'm just gonna like blast through one slide and then we can go into playtime. The last slide I have is just where we're going and what's next. We noticed with BGA that their teachers are overwhelmed, and lots of teachers are overwhelmed, and we're exploring this idea of remote centaur coaches. And this is kind of an offering or an add-on to schools, where a lot of my previous work is in sort of pedagogy around self-directed learning and agency. And so what we've noticed is, like, if we're creating dashboards for learner information to be shared via URL links, we can actually add capacity to a school by having teachers trained in things like project-based learning and actually taking the load off of the teachers on the ground. So we're exploring this idea of like having additional remote teachers who maybe see a dashboard of the 40 or so students in this class, who add capacity to that teacher to help them help the teacher, but also help all the kids implement something like project-based learning or self-directed learning, or whatever is they're mandated to do as a school. So we're exploring this idea of remote coaches to build capacity for schools. Also going to be implementing the course syllabus PDF stuff. So input PDFs, output a learning pathway, implementing the rich text editor so you can add code, images, videos to your portfolio entries. Adding AI agents at the to-do level, so the to-do list that does itself. Linking ARK to your LinkedIn and your Twitter so that you can have a command line for your social network. So if you don't have a mentor for something, we can find you mentors on LinkedIn, and either in your existing network or not in your network, or Twitter, by building like clusters of who cares about a certain topic and showing you those clusters of people on the internet. And then social sharing for your final projects, like how do I get the final project off onto Twitter or LinkedIn to show you what I did? And also integrating with industry leading marketplaces, so that there's more offerings that are available to the learner. And with that, playtime. If anybody wants to jump on ARK, you can scan the QR code, create an account with Google. It's probably the quickest way. Yeah, and I guess maybe we can set a timer or something, or talk and play at the same time, open to both, where you go and create a project once you have a profile, and yeah, try aligning it with a curriculum that you care about, or don't if you don't care about the curriculum. But yeah, thank you,
Serj.
Letting me share.
Talking and playing is always my jam. I want to check on time, and I know you had around 8 minutes, Serj. So what do you say? Should we try and talk and play in 8 minutes? Or what?
Yeah, let's talk and play. Like as people are, trying. I've put the link in chat as well. Yeah, feel free to create an account. Go to the profile tab, and yeah, input a little bit about the project, the project type, and any sort of requirements or features you have of the project.
I wonder with 8 minutes to truly play, what I'd love to do is those who are watching asynchronously as well, and those on the call, what is the best way for people to, are you meeting up with schools and change makers to connect and do demos and plays, for longer periods? How does that work?
Yeah, so right now we still have 2 more pilot positions that we'd like to fill out. So if your school wants to, or a network or homeschool co-op wants to pilot with us, like we were doing with Brave Generation Academy, we ended up building, posters that went around their learning centers, lots of custom new things, and also sort of weekly calls with everyone, sort of training them on the new tool, seeing how it fits into their existing culture and pedagogy and tools. So yeah, that's definitely one way we can play more, is to jump on weekly calls. We did about 8 weeks with the goal of establishing a rollout plan across the rest of the network, but we just pick a small group of, say, 6 to 7 of your teachers or coaches to work with. So that's one way we can play. And
And if you were to articulate the profile or rough profile of these types of partnerships, could you share it now? Just because, you know, Claire, Lisa, Toan, many
Yeah.
people on the call, you know, might have people in their circles.
Yeah, I think that again, the main thing is culture. Like if the school or network has a culture of, and often the marker is like, do they call their adults coaches or facilitators? If that's the case, then they're probably way more in line with implementing this. Whereas if they're just teachers, then we may not be a cultural fit. And that doesn't mean that we're not helpful to those teachers. Like you saw people putting in, you know, IGCSE maths and stuff. So, but yeah, this is really where we find the most resonance, is like some sense of project-based learning, some sense of adults as coaches or facilitators.
Claire, I'm curious to hear from your perspective, having done a little internship, having done a little project, how is this evolution sitting with you?
Yeah, it is really interesting. We do challenge-based learning, which is very aligned with project-based learning. It's just got different phases, but I think it would be really interesting to trial this with our learners. One of my thoughts was kind of, I don't know, I guess, is it doing too much for the learners? I would, you know, by having all of that, and I'm sure that's something that you do get, like a response, like a sort of anti-response. You know, because that is one of the skill sets, is developing like the, you know, setting milestones and kind of identifying what they need to do and so on and so forth. But having said that, some learners do get really tangled up in that and end up spending a lot of time on that and less time on actually developing their prototype or their solution. So I think it would be really interesting to trial it, just to see if that kind of process was scaffolded for them, how much further could they go with their idea and their solution, and actually kind of the development of their prototype. So yeah, I would be interested in trialing it out, the project scoper one in particular. Yeah.
Well, maybe try putting in some, you know, it says project one-liner. It could also be like your problem statement.
Exactly.
You know, I've tried it with things like trying to fix roads in rural Nepal, and it came out with interesting to-dos that seemed aligned. So yeah, try out you know, a problem statement, and I mean, yeah, let's explore it if it makes sense. To the point of like, is it doing too much? Yeah, I think really it's like, it's very age dependent, like what too much is as well. But yeah, I really think like getting unstuck, and at least being the point of conversation between a coach and a student, is very interesting, because the to-dos might not come out perfectly right, and actually in that is a kind of beauty where it's like, oh, well, should we make this better? You know, and you know, the draft that the AI produced was not perfect. The tangle that the learner was in is also not great. And then the conversation between the student and the AI and the teacher is actually quite a beautiful thing. So
Yeah.
I think that's often quite fun to see.
I love that.
Yeah, I think it can be used as a springboard, can't it, to kind of launch them into it. And often that first step is the hardest one. So having something like this just helps kind of push them forward and launch them into their project. Yeah. We also have pathway advisory at School of Humanity, and I think the ARK could be useful for learners to kind of maybe understand where they want to go. So, or if they've got ideas of kind of the future pathways that they'd like to take, I think it can help orientate them. So
is that a human who delivers that? Is that a pathway advisor?
It's not
coach?
an AI. It's a session that we have, a pathway advisory. We have pathway advisors. So they meet once a week, and they have like sessions where they're looking at, you know, trends, jobs of the future, or universities, or whatever it might be, helping learners kind of identify what direction they want to move in. And then they also have one-to-ones with the learners. So the advisors will meet with the learners once a term or twice a term, and kind of make sure that they're taking the right credits, for example, or, you know, taking the right skill units to be moving in the direction that they want to go in. So I think it would be a useful
great point
for that as well.
the pathways, Lisa and I would probably relate. In Canada, it was called guidance counselor, who helped us on our pathways. But now guidance counselors, especially in North America, are so taxed, and also not necessarily looking at frontier or new careers. They're a bit outdated, and also dealing with a lot of social emotional tangles that young people are going through. So I really love the idea of ARK being a sort of springboard tool for the pathways advisors or guidance counselors to have a session. Maybe they're trained on it with City as a school, but they go through it with the child, the learner. And I don't know how this lands for you, Toan, but kind of going through how to use it, and then they pass it to the young person to start exploring pathways on their own. And then the next session is like they talk about the tangles, the curiosity, what's coming up. But the young person's really in the driver's seat of exploring themselves, and it's really relevant to them as opposed to some outdated old pathways that they don't relate to. I love that.
That's exactly the pattern at BGA that we saw, is that it often comes through the teacher or the adult. So, you know, an adult who can model the use of the tool, and then suddenly, you know, once they've got the gist, you know, kids are off figuring things out, and, you know, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that, and just like putting in different pathways. But that initial discussion of the first pathway and saying like, oh, well, you know these concepts, and what about these skills? If we had any prior knowledge of these skills, or does that sound even fun to you to do on the job? And the adult also has more lived experience of like, hey, what could it actually be like to work in robotics or something? Like, is that a stressful job? Do you want a stressful job? So they work on the emotional side rather than the detail by detail thing. Yeah.
Lisa, did you have something you want to share?
Yeah, and this is great because I'm really looking at this for the very first time. So a lot of things are coming up, and also if you've gone over this before, fill me in. But
Happy to, yeah.
If I put on the hat as learner or educator, I'm wondering if it's of interest to you to kind of have these entry points that are separated, that speak the language of whoever is interacting with the app. Like I could imagine that the interface might look, feel, and communicate differently for a high school student than a teacher. And I think what makes it human, relevant, and kind of problem solving is the language. So I'm just putting ideas out there.
Yeah.
It can essentially be the same program, but maybe you log in, and not to separate too much and give you more work. But if you were to log in as this persona or that, perhaps there's a video of an educator speaking to another educator so that I can see that we're talking the same talk. And for student as well, that's one quick thing. And if I could just,
yep, no, Toan left.
And just was because you talked about like so many amazing applications, and like what you're working on next, that you can link it with your Twitter and your LinkedIn, which I would say is not high school student related. So it sounds like there's a lot of use cases or personas, and maybe in these like first iterations, like thinking of honing in on a couple specific problems, like high school students looking into their next college or university. Maybe that is like one specific problem that's an entry point.
Yeah.
Anyway, just sharing my thoughts.
You want to use it for your exploration of next, like grown-ups in midlife career shift. This would be amazing. Like I'm actually seeing what you're seeing. I'm like, maybe for grown-ups, but
yeah.
Anyway.
My points that my thoughts are like, yeah, absolutely. I think what is it? Yeah, stylizing it for various audiences absolutely like makes a ton of sense. We also want to be really impactful in the global south and developing nations. So we're really thinking about like localization and how that will look like, and just customizing that interface. so yeah, would love to keep jamming on that. I think the use case that we've tried to zero in on is sort of, you know, I need to get a job, whether that's 16 leaving school, but it's very careers focused right now. Mainly just the broader context in which we are working is often like we solve an employer problem. And that's not to say there aren't tons of benefits that are just like great for homeschoolers who don't who just want to build projects and don't want to find a job. But yeah, that's kind of the place we're nestled into, is like 16 upwards, 18 upwards really, looking for their first job. And it just happens to be very also applicable for career switchers as well. But yeah, not specifically designed for their exact like needs, more for the younger audience in that. And yeah, but yeah, great thoughts.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Serj, you're moving at lightning speed, and I already have a huge list of people I'm going to be sharing this with to potentially get them in the running to be prototypers, to be collaborators with you. Serj, any quick note from you on the best way people watching can reach you to play with this tool, to test it, to contact you?
Yeah, sure. I'll put my email in chat. Aschool.com. This is probably the best way to get at me. If you want to partner in some way on running this pilot, or like receive some kind of training for your staff.
And that's for anyone watching. That's Serj, SERJ, at cityasaschool.com, all one word.
And yeah, otherwise I'm on Twitter at Serj Hunt _ARK after the tool. And yeah, the other place is cityasaschool.com, where we've repositioned a lot of our messaging around ARK being the sort of portal into the rest of the ecosystem. So yeah, those are probably the places to go check out what we do.
Well, we appreciate you, and you have the heart and the brains in the position that you're at, connecting young learners with their future pathways. Thank you, Serj. Thanks everyone for coming, and we will see you next time on Hope Braintrust. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, Claire.
We have one more. Bianca, she's there.
Yeah.
Hi.
Ah, hello. Hey.